Hey, it's me, your friend Pat. I'm back with the Leaderboard to talk about The Legend of Zelda, one of gaming's oldest and most celebrated franchises. We're going to compare two games that both critics and players have called perfect, Ocarina of Time and Breath of the Wild. Don't forget to subscribe, hit that bell icon to become a member of the notification squad, and let's go! Breath of the Wild is stunningly gorgeous. Skipping any title or menu screen, that first breathtaking vista when you emerge from the Shrine of Resurrection shows a colorful and fantastically realized world filled with promise. The fact that the gameplay fulfills the graphics promise is the reason so many consider Breath of the Wild to be a perfect game. Now, it's unfair to say that Ocarina's graphics are worse than Breath of the Wild, because, it's 20 years older. When the game was released back in 1998, Ocarina's graphics were as good as any 3D games looked on the Nintendo 64 or anywhere else for that matter. Ocarina's style was neither realistic nor cartoony. It was somewhere in between, and it was the perfect down-the-middle approach that seemed appropriate for the level of detail possible on the hardware and appropriate for the tone of the series. Nintendo went with an extremely cartoony look for the series' next installment, The Wind Waker, then dialed it back a bit with the darker and more serious Twilight Princess and attempted to split the difference again with Skyward Sword. Breath of the Wild returns to the standard Zelda art design, even though certain staples like Link's screen outfit have been reimagined. Overall, both Breath of the Wild and Ocarina present a balance for the Legend of Zelda world and characters between cartoony and realistic, bright and dark, and classic and contemporary. In terms of 3D adventure gameplay, Ocarina set the template in the same way that Mario 64 did with 3D platform games. From innovations like Z-targeting to the progression of items and dungeons, every game that followed was either building or subverting the standards set by Ocarina of Time. Ocarina was a joy to play in 1998, and it's so polished in execution that it's just as fun to play through today. But the fact is, 20 years of game development has built upon the standards set by Ocarina, so, barring a Temple of Time switch with your 1998 self, it's impossible for Ocarina to feel as innovative today as it did back then. Breath of the Wild came to life during a time when games that used Ocarina's template had become predictable, particularly within the Zelda series itself. For Breath of the Wild, the designers borrowed heavily from newer open-world franchises like Skyrim and Assassin's Creed, everything from the crafting system of cooking meals and elixirs to using towers as warp points. For the first time in a Zelda game, every weapon had a durability limit, which forced you to be both more strategic and resourceful when taking on enemies. And while stamina and weather had been factors in prior titles, both had to be considered constantly when exploring. For example, you certainly do not want to go climbing with a steel sword in a thunderstorm. Breath of the Wild shines most in how it evokes play from the player. The play is built entirely upon your curiosity, drawing you in at your pace and rewarding your curiosity with surprises around every turn. Shigeru Miyamoto described his original inspiration for the Legend of Zelda series as being the wonder he felt as a child exploring the woods near his home. All of the Zelda games capture this feeling, but when Breath of the Wild's freewheeling style was first presented to Miyamoto by the game's director, Hidemaru Fujibayashi, he reported that Miyamoto spent most of his first moments climbing trees and just exploring for the fun of it. So while Breath of the Wild is filled with hundreds of hours of content, the core experience is as simple as a cat chasing a string, because the movement is just as fun as completing the objective. Also, related, playing with string is surprisingly fun. While story has always taken a backseat to game design and Nintendo's development philosophy, both Breath of the Wild and Ocarina of Time succeed in creating memorable characters and a vivid setting. The overall story itself is as simple as Mario, but with a sprinkle of Tolkien. Both games feature dystopian future versions of Hyrule caused by Ganon winning and capturing Princess Zelda. In Ocarina of Time, the Gerudo Thief King, Ganondorf, manipulates the leaders of Hyrule into opening the Sacred Realm in the Temple of Time, giving him access to the Triforce, which lets him take over. When Link awakens as an adult 7 years into the future, he finds the kingdom facing dark times with Ganondorf in power, and immediately sets off to awaken the ancient sages to seal Ganon back away. In the end, Child Link goes back in time once more to prevent Ganondorf from ever ascending in the first place. This creates the dual timelines that future games in the series, like Wind Waker and Twilight Princess, take place in. It's definitely a bit jarring to experience the time jump from a peaceful kingdom to a dystopian one. Everywhere you visit as adult Link is definitely worse off than where you left it, and everything is just broken and bad in comparison. Ocarina of Time builds the disappointment into the settings and temples of the adult Link world, and it's part of the reason the game's story resonates so deeply, because even in this fantasy kingdom, a universally powerful theme of growing up is expressed through the gameplay. Link from Breath of the Wild also awakens to a post-apocalyptic Hyrule, but this time there's no going back to fix it. We learn that Link was a knight appointed to protect Princess Zelda 100 years ago, but they weren't able to prevent the prophesized return of the demon Calamity Ganon. Ganon. So Link sets off to save the kingdom from Ganon and free Zelda, ideally by working with the ancient Sheikah monks and their shrines and curing the divine beasts, or then again you could just go straight to Hyrule Castle and beat Ganon after getting your paraglider from the King of Hyrule's ghost. But you probably won't do that straight away because this Hyrule is beautiful, so unless you're being pursued by a Guardian's laser, most of Hyrule is very pleasant to explore. The gameplay encourages you to take your time, but technically in-story Link should definitely be rushing to go as fast as he can. Instead you're like, well, Ganon's been in control for 100 years, what's another 200 hours while I hunt for Korok seeds so I can get that golden turd? In general, the epic feeling of the main storyline is probably better in Ocarina of Time, but the settings are so much fuller and better realized in Breath of the Wild. Again, not super surprising having a 20-year advantage and all.
Better? Better is a strong word, okay? Just because there's not a linear storyline like an Ocarina of Time doesn't make it not as good. I played Dark Souls.
Prior to Breath of the Wild, every main Zelda title followed the traditional dungeon template that had become standard for the series since Ocarina of Time and A Link to the Past. You'd have to go back 30 years to find a different approach to the original NES Legend of Zelda from 1987. That's exactly what Nintendo did in designing Breath of the Wild. One of the game's biggest innovations was the change in structure to your play experience. It fundamentally shifted away from fulfilling objectives to fulfilling curiosity. And that's not to say there aren't dungeons, they're just different. Between the 120 shrines, 4 divine beasts, Hyrule Castle, and the DLC packs, Breath of the Wild has at least as many dungeon rooms as previous Zelda games. But this game made exploration the meat of the Hyrule hoagie instead of the dungeons. But the best Zelda dungeons evoked atmosphere and told a story while you progressed. Ocarina of Time is full of memorable and atmospheric dungeons. The austere and mossy forest temple, the Egyptian-inspired spirit temple, the dark but serene Shadow Temple. In this regard, the shrines in Breath of the Wild don't compare. They're mostly independent little puzzle rooms or battles in a blank alien world. The divine beasts are fuller versions, yeah, definitely, but still remain remote and alien rather than feeling integrated within the world. Only Hyrule Castle feels like a traditional dungeon in Breath of the Wild, but even without traditional dungeons, the game delivers the same qualities, they're just presented in a different way. Maybe the next Zelda game could have it both ways. Open world, non-linear progression, multiple ways to solve puzzles, and full dungeons built within the world. But yeah, who knows? We'll have to wait and find out. Just as the settings are fuller in Breath of the Wild, so are Hyrule's inhabitants. The game introduces characters who fulfill familiar archetypes that we've seen before, and while they aren't new, they're definitely improved. For example, Mipha, the champion of the Zora's divine beast, is super similar to Ocarina's Princess Ruto, the Sage of the Water Temple. Both provide a Shape of Water-esque hint at a romantic life for Link, which of course we do not have time for because we're on a quest to save this broken kingdom, thank you very much. But Mipha receives the far better characterization. We see a fuller vision of her life, particularly in the Champion's Ballad DLC. We also see it through her brother, Prince Sidon, through her father, the diaries left behind, and through her scenes with Link and his memories. The characters in Ocarina simply don't receive the same amount of time to shine, but that doesn't mean that the characters in Ocarina aren't also great. Saria is a fantastically realized character. The storyline of Ingo taking over Lon Lon Ranch from Talon and his daughter Malon demonstrates the darkness of the timeline. Interestingly enough, the Lon Lon Ranch Easter egg in Breath of the Wild really helps the post-apocalyptic reality become more tangible. It's perhaps the only thing besides the Temple of Time and the graves in Fort Hateno that really drives home the destruction of the world. And as always, outside of his yelps and yas, Link remains a non-speaking character in both tales. He's defined only by his actions in the story, mostly by being the wielder of the Master Sword who does all the fun video game things. At the same time, both Ocarina and Breath of the Wild do an excellent job of giving Link a distinct personality through the way in which he emerges into the story. The Link from Ocarina is known first as the boy with no fairy. He's an outsider among his peers, the childlike elves in the woods. Later, after his 7-year slumber is reversed by returning the Master Sword to the Temple of Time, and Link is switched between time periods, earning the moniker the Hero of Time.
As one gets when one time travels. I think they made Link a nice plaque for that.
Zelda has a strong characterization in both Breath of the Wild and Ocarina as well. In Ocarina, the child Zelda is kind of like your friend Saria, but also slightly mysterious and a powerful mystic. When it's revealed that she was sneaking around as Sheik in the adult timeline while keeping a version of herself trapped in Hyrule Castle with Ganondorf, we learn that she is an active kick-butt hero just like Link, with an even cooler outfit. In Breath of the Wild, Zelda is mostly seen in memory flashbacks, but she has got one of the most emotive and three-dimensional characterizations in any Zelda game. It's easy for us to feel her frustration at not being able to realize her powers. We see her sad sense of duty as she tries to perform the rituals but sees no successes, with the weight of the world on her shoulders, and her despair when she realizes that it's all lost. While some of the voice actors in Breath of the Wild are a bit corny in their cartoonish performance, I'm looking at you, Rivali, Zelda's performance is consistently strong in a variety of emotions. She doesn't physically kick butt like Sheik in Ocarina, but we can understand her feelings far better in Breath of the Wild, even though the overall storyline isn't quite as clear or as strong as the one in Ocarina. They both provide different strengths in Zelda's character.
I'm Pat, and we just compared Ocarina of Time and Breath of the Wild. What was your favorite part of Ocarina? What did you like most in Breath of the Wild? Leave us a comment and let us know. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell icon to become a member of the notification squad. This has been the Leaderboard, your home for video game facts.